The $500 million penthouse was a palace of glass and arrogance, vibrating with the bass of a party I wasn't invited to. I stood in the service elevator, my hands stained with transformer oil and my heart calcified by 10 years of being not enough. When the doors opened, I wasn't met with music, but with a $100 bill fluttering to the floor at my feet. "Fix the lights, slave," Marcus barked, his arm wrapped around Sarah, the woman who had traded. Our wedding plans for his crypto-funded empire. My guests shouldn't have to breathe the same air as a lowly electrician. Sarah didn't look away. She smirked, her diamonds catching the light I had spent 12 hours stabilizing. They thought they were the masters of the skyline. They didn't know that the very ground they stood on was a lie built on stolen voltage. I didn't pick up the money. Instead, I looked at my watch. In 60 seconds. The empire wouldn't just be dark, it would be extinct. For 7 years, Sarah and I lived in the hum of a different kind of energy. We shared a cramped studio apartment in Queens where the radiator hissed like a dying animal, and the lights flickered every time the subway roared beneath us. I was a junior grid technician then, working double shifts at the Con Ed substation, my skin permanently smelling of ozone and copper. Sarah was a struggling designer. I remember coming home at 3 a.m., my boots caked in mud from a burst underground line, only to find her crying over a pile of past-due bills. "We'll get there, Sarah," I'd whisper, rubbing the tension out of her shoulders with hands that were always calloused. "I'm learning the grid. I'm becoming the master of the city's pulse. One day, we won't just be watching the skyline. We'll be part of it." I poured everything I had into her, every overtime check, every holiday bonus. Every ounce of my soul went into her startup dream. I lived on cold coffee and 99-cent pizza so she could have the luxury fabrics and the high-end software. I even used my technical expertise to help her first office save on utility costs by optimizing their power load, a legal but brilliant workaround that only a grid architect could pull off. Then came Marcus. He didn't have calluses. He had a private jet and a mouth full of promises about decentralized finance and digital empires. And he was a crypto billionaire who looked at the world as a game to be rigged. Sarah didn't leave me all at once. She eroded away. It started with her being too busy for our Tuesday night dinners. Then she stopped wearing the silver necklace I'd saved 6 months to buy her. The final blow didn't happen in a shouting match. It happened via a text message while I was 30 feet underground, repairing a high-voltage transformer during a summer blackout. "James, you're a good man, but you're a ceiling. Marcus is a sky. I need more than someone who just keeps the lights on." I spent that night in the dark, surrounded by the hum of the city I was keeping alive, realizing that the woman I loved viewed my life's work, the very backbone of civilization, as blue-collar trash. 2 years passed. I didn't just stay a technician. I became the grid operations lead for the entire metro district. I became the man who decides which skyscrapers get priority during a surge and which sectors are shed during a crisis. I was the ghost in the machine, invisible but absolute. That's why I was at the penthouse tonight. Not because Marcus invited me, but because his Empire Tower was triggering massive red flags on the city's load-balancing servers. His building was drawing enough power to run a small hospital, yet his utility bill showed the consumption of a laundromat. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there as a public servant. But as I stood in that elevator, listening to the muffled bass of their $2 million gala, Sarah's smirk from the thumbnail hit me harder than a 10,000-volt arc. Marcus wasn't just a sky. He was a thief. And Sarah, she was the one holding the bag. The elevator doors hissed open, and the scent of expensive lilies and sulfur-heavy cologne hit me like a physical blow. The penthouse was a cathedral of glass overlooking the city I maintained. I was wearing my dark blue utility jumpsuit, the Gridmaster, patch on my shoulder hidden under a grease-stained jacket. I looked like a ghost at a funeral, out of place and unwelcome. "James." Sarah's voice cut through the chatter. She was draped in emerald silk, a glass of vintage cristal in her hand. Her eyes traveled from my worn boots to my tired face. And for a split second, I saw a flicker of something pity-guilt. but it was quickly extinguished by the arrival of Marcus. "Ah, the maintenance man is here," Marcus announced loud enough to silence the room. He walked toward me with the swagger of a man who thought he owned the laws of physics. "Tell me, James, does the city pay you by the hour or by the spark? Because I've got a little problem in the West Wing, and my certified engineers are too busy sipping my scotch to fix it." Level 1. The public mockery. He didn't wait for an answer. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of $100 bills and flicked them at my chest. One by one, they fell to the floor, landing on my boots. The room erupted in suppressed giggles. "Pick them up, James. That's probably more than you make in a month of crawling through sewers," Marcus sneered. I didn't flinch. My eyes were fixed on the flickering of the chandelier above his head. It wasn't a loose bulb. It was a harmonic distortion, a specific frequency caused by heavy industrial cooling units. "Marcus," I said, my voice as cold as a mountain stream, "I'm not here for your money. Your building is triggering a level 4 load imbalance on the municipal grid. I'm here to inspect your substation." "Load imbalance?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "James, stop trying to sound important. You're an electrician. You fix outlets. Marcus is a visionary. He's building the future of finance in this very building. Just do your job and stop making a scene. You're embarrassing me." The embarrassment of my existence that was the second level of the sting. For years, I was the hero who fixed her world. Now I was a stain on her new silk dress. Level 2, the coerced fraud. Marcus grabbed my arm, leaning in close so only I could smell the expensive bourbon on his breath. "Listen to me, you little worm. I know what you're seeing on your monitors. I've got 50,000 ASIC miners running in the basement, pulling 20 megawatts directly from the city's main trunk. I've bypassed the fiscal meters. If you report anything, I'll call your commissioner. We play golf on Sundays. One word from me, and you'll be fixing toasters in a basement for the rest of your life." He thought he was threatening me. In reality, he was giving me a confession while he was barking. My hand was in my pocket, tapping a command into my mobile terminal. Small win number 1. I didn't shut him down, not yet. Instead, I rerouted the building's secondary cooling loop. Within seconds, the temperature in the room began to rise. Subtle at first, then stifling. The wealthy guests started fanning themselves with their $500 invites. "It's getting a bit warm in here, isn't it, Marcus?" I asked calmly. "That's what happens when you steal power. The grid pushes back." "Fix it," Marcus hissed, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "I'm paying you, aren't I? Use your lowly skills and make the AC work before my servers fry." Level 3, the ultimate ultimatum. I led them toward the private mechanical room behind the bar. Inside, the hum of the illegal transformers was deafening a low, angry growl that Marcus had tried to hide behind soundproof walls. "This is a federal violation, Marcus," I said, pointing to the glowing red indicators on the high-tension breakers. "You're not just stealing electricity. You're risking a transformer explosion that could take out 3 city blocks. I have to disconnect this line immediately." Marcus slammed his hand against the wall, inches from my face. "You touch that switch, and I'll make sure Sarah tells the police you tried to extort us. I'll ruin you, James. I'll tell the world you're a bitter ex trying to sabotage. A billionaire because your girl finally upgraded. Now bypass the safety protocols and give me full power. Do it." I looked at Sarah. She was standing in the doorway, looking at the illegal machinery with a mix of greed and fear. "He's right, James," she whispered. "Don't be a hero. Just be a worker. For once in your life, just do what you're told and take the money. Don't ruin this for us." The us was the final blow. The spring was fully compressed. There was no more James the boyfriend, no more James the victim. There was only the master of the grid. "You're right, Sarah," I said, my thumb hovering over the master override on my handheld device. "I should just do my job. And my job is to protect the grid from parasites." I saw the small win number 2 on my screen. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, had just acknowledged my live data feed. The trap was set. Marcus was grinning, thinking he'd bullied me into submission. He didn't realize that in my world, when the lights go out, it's not because of a mistake. It's because of a choice. I didn't waste time arguing with him. In my world, you don't fight people with your fists. You fight them with the truth of the wires. I pulled out my tablet, the one Marcus thought was just a digital clipboard for a blue-collar worker, and started doing what I do best. "I'll do exactly what you asked, Marcus," I said, my voice steady and professional. "I'll fix your power problem so your guests can get back to their champagne." Marcus smirked, looking at Sarah as if he'd just tamed a wild animal. "See, everyone has a price, even the guys who claim to have integrity." But as I tapped away on the screen, I wasn't fixing anything for him. I was documenting a crime. Marcus thought he was clever by hiding his massive crypto mining farm in the basement, but he forgot that every watt of electricity leaves a footprint. You can't hide $2 million worth of stolen energy from the man who designed the very grid you're stealing from. "What's taking so long?" Sarah snapped, fanning herself with a silk napkin. "The air conditioning is barely working." "It's a big building," Sarah, I replied, not looking up. "And Marcus has been very creative with the wiring. I'm just making sure the paperwork matches the reality," while they were dreaming of more millions. I was sending a live data feed of the building's power, surged directly to the city's inspection department. I wasn't just an electrician. I was a lead auditor for the Grid Authority. I had the legal right to shut down any building that posed a public safety risk. And a basement full of overheating illegal servers, that was the biggest risk I'd seen in years. Small win number 3. I triggered a manual override on his basement cooling system. Suddenly, Marcus's phone started buzzing like a chainsaw. His mining profit app was flashing red alerts. "My servers," he yelled, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. "They're overheating. The hashing rate is tanking. James, stop whatever you're doing and give them more juice." "I can't do that, Marcus," I said, finally closing the tablet and looking him in the eye. "The system has detected a massive theft. It's automatically isolating the source to prevent a fire. It's a safety protocol I personally wrote into the city's building code 3 years ago." The room went quiet. The smirk on Sarah's face began to melt. "You wrote the code," she whispered. "I wasn't just fixing lights when we were together, Sarah. I was designing the nervous system of this entire city. This building, I know every hidden wire, every bypassed meter, and every corner Marcus used to cheat the system. I didn't come here to fix your party. I came here to end his fraud." I reached into my jumpsuit and pulled out my official credentials. Not a maintenance badge, but a federal grid inspector ID. "Marcus, I've just filed an emergency report in less than 10 minutes. The city is going to cut the main feed to this address, and because you tampered with the meters. The IRS is going to want to know how you've been running a multi-million-dollar crypto operation on a residential budget." Marcus tried to grab my tablet, his eyes bulging with desperation. "I'll buy you. I'll give you $5 million right now. Just delete the report." "You don't have $5 million, Marcus," I said, stepping back. "You have a pile of debt and a building that's about to become the world's most expensive darkroom." I looked at Sarah, who was staring at Marcus as if she'd never seen him before. The sky she had traded me for was starting to look like a very small, very dark cage. "The city doesn't like it when people steal from the grid," I said, my voice cold and final. "And I don't like it when people forget who keeps the world running." The elevator pinged. The first group of inspectors and officers had reached the lobby. The trap wasn't just set, it was already closing. The air in the penthouse was stifling now. The cooling system's dead, and the scent of expensive perfume mixing with the sharp, metallic tang of overheating electronics. Marcus was pacing like a caged animal, his $5,000 suit drenched in sweat, while Sarah stood by the window, looking out at the city as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "You're bluffing," Marcus hissed, stepping into my light. "You're just a bitter ex-boyfriend playing God with a tablet. You can't shut me down. I pay the property taxes on this palace. You paid for the bricks," Marcus, I said, walking slowly toward the main breaker panel, "but the energy inside them, that belongs to the city. And you've been shoplifting it for 2 years." I reached the master lever. It was a heavy, industrial-grade handle that controlled the lifeblood of the entire tower. James stopped. Sarah ran toward me, her heels clicking frantically on the marble. "Think about what you're doing. If you do this, Marcus loses everything. The investors, the company, the penthouse, our life. You're ruining a billionaire's career over a grudge." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt nothing but clarity. He's not a billionaire, Sarah. He's a guy with a lot of stolen electricity and a very loud mouth. And you didn't choose a sky. You just chose a bigger cage. It's time I opened the door. "I'll destroy you," Marcus roared, lunging toward me. I didn't blink. I simply grabbed the lever. "You already tried, Marcus. You called me a slave. You threw money at my boots. You told me I was a lowly electrician. Well, it's time to see what happens when the lowly guy stops working." Clunk. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent room. I slammed the lever down with the weight of every night I'd spent working overtime while Marcus was stealing my life's work. In an instant, the world died. The booming bass of the speakers cut out mid-sentence. The grand chandeliers flickered once and vanished. The digital displays, the backlit bars, the smart glass windows, everything went pitch black. The gasps from the guests sounded like a collective intake of breath in a tomb. But the real blow came 3 seconds later. As the guests stumbled toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, they didn't see a blackout. They saw a miracle. Outside the rest of Manhattan was a glowing golden forest of light. The Empire State Building was shimmering in blue and white. The streetlights were humming. Every single building surrounding us was radiant. Only the Empire Tower stood like a charred tooth in a perfect smile, a 60-story monolith of absolute darkness. "Why is it only us?" Sarah's voice rose to a scream in the dark. "James, why is the rest of the city still bright?" I clicked on my high-intensity work light. The beam was a surgical strike cutting through the shadows and landing right on Marcus's face. He looked pathetic, blinded, sweating, and trembling. "Because the city doesn't have a problem, Sarah," I said, my voice echoing in the dead penthouse. "Only Marcus does. I've isolated this building from the grid for safety violations. I didn't just turn off the lights. I revoked his right to use the city's power. And since he bypassed the meters, the city isn't coming to turn them back on. The IRS and the FBI are coming to ask where the $2 million went." Sirens began to wail below, the red and blue lights reflecting off the dark glass like a funeral disco. "You said you wanted a man who could change the world," I said, walking toward the door, my flashlight illuminating the path for the federal agents who were just stepping out of the elevator. "I just changed yours, permanently." I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they looked like in the dark, small, cold, and finally completely powerless. The fallout was swifter than a short circuit. Within 48 hours, Marcus was no longer a crypto visionary. He was a federal defendant. The IRS didn't care about his digital empire. They cared about the $2.1 million in unpaid energy taxes and the systematic fraud he'd used to fuel his servers. The Empire Tower remained dark for 3 weeks, a black scar on the skyline that served as a daily reminder no one is bigger than the grid. Sarah reached out once, a desperate, trembling voicemail at 2 a.m., crying about how the bank had frozen their joint accounts and how Marcus's investors were now looking for someone to blame. She asked if I could talk to the board, if I could use my influence to get the power back on so they could sell the penthouse and start over. I didn't delete the message. I kept it as a reminder of the woman who thought a man's worth was measured in the height of the floor he lived on, rather than the strength of the foundation he built. I didn't call her back. Silence, I've learned, is the most expensive thing you can give someone who doesn't deserve your words. Today, I'm back in the operations center. The city is humming a beautiful, synchronized heart beating at 60 hertz. Marcus is facing 10 years in a federal facility where the only crypto he'll see is the code on his inmate ID. Sarah. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents. The emerald dress sold to pay for a lawyer who couldn't save her. They thought I was just a lowly electrician, a background character in their glamorous movie. They forgot that the background is what keeps the stage from collapsing. If you found out the person who treated you like trash was, literally, the only one keeping your world from falling apart, would you have given them a second chance, or would you have flipped the switch exactly like I did?